If the cabinet shovel happens, it will be at the close of a wild week for the Prime Minister. Freeland's resignation has upped the ante, as you heard in that conversation, for his own leadership and prompted more Liberal MPs to ask him to step aside. Montreal Liberal Anthony Housefather is one of them. Mr. Housefather, good to have you back on the show. Thanks for making the time.
Always a pleasure, Vassy.
So we spoke in advance of that emergency caucus on Monday, which of course was prompted by Chrystia Freeland's resignation. What can you convey to Canadians watching tonight about your sense of whether or not caucus wants the Prime Minister to stay or go?
I think there's many in caucus that share my views that he needs to go if we want to have a chance to offer a viable alternative to the Conservatives in the next election. I think going into an election, which the NDP has now said will be in February or March if he does not go, with a leader who is minus 43, according to the latest Abacus poll, in approval ratings, and who the vast majority of Canadians want to see go, would make absolutely no sense for me and the vast majority of Liberal MPs. So I think at that meeting, I sensed that the Prime Minister was truly reflecting on this, much more than in the past when this has been discussed. And I certainly hope he makes the right decision for the future of the Liberal Party, for his candidates, for his caucus, and most importantly, for Canadians.
So it is your sense that, if I could put it kind of in this way, that this time is different when it comes to the Prime Minister actually reflecting? Because I remember the last time some of you and your colleagues went forward with the same ask, about 6 weeks ago, he promised to reflect, and within, I think it was like 18 hours, had said, no, I'm staying. He hasn't made the same pronouncement publicly, but last night he certainly didn't sound like someone who was going. Do you believe this time is different?
I do believe this time is different, given the body language and his voice. I don't think he can say he's going until he actually ever goes. I think everybody knows that. So I'm sure he's going to put on the air that he's staying until he actually goes. But I think this time it's much more serious for him. I think we're even closer to an election. None of the uplift in the polls that has been promised have happened. Indeed, the country has turned more and more against him. I think if he's on the ballot, for many Canadians, the only ballot issue will be, do I want Justin Trudeau to stay Prime Minister? Their answer will be no, and they will vote against Liberal candidates who deserve to be reelected. And it will be much more difficult for us to make the case that we are a credible alternative to the Conservatives, as Canadians want change. And for Canadians, he's more of the same. So again, we have a choice. I think this is a precipice for the Liberal Party. We can go into the next election with a different vision, a more centrist vision, in my view, a hopeful vision, and one with a different leader who conveys a different message. Or we can go into a very soon election with Justin Trudeau, and I don't think that's in the best interest of anybody.
One of your caucus colleagues, Sean Casey, who for a while now has been publicly calling on the Prime Minister to do exactly what you're calling on him to do tonight and over the past few days, has said that there aren't more people speaking freely or speaking publicly about that within the Liberal caucus because of the specter of a cabinet shuffle and the possibility of getting into cabinet. Do you think that's true?
I think there's certainly some of my colleagues that would feel that way. I mean, for a long time, right, people haven't spoken publicly about what we say privately because there's a concept of loyalty, there's a concept of team, and there's a concept of your own personal ambition in many cases. And I think at this point, we've passed that point. If you're going to go into cabinet now, so you're going to go into a cabinet in December and be there until February when an election is called, and then see the party, in my view, likely go down to a very bad defeat. I don't know that makes sense for anyone. I think, again, this is really the time that Liberal MPs, cabinet ministers, need to let the Prime Minister know, whether privately or publicly, what they think. Otherwise, it'll be too late.
One of your colleagues in caucus, another colleague, I should say, Wayne Long, wrote a letter to put to caucus today in which he argues essentially, and we'll speak to him a little bit later on, but essentially silence is complicity. That if you aren't speaking out, then you're kind of going to be part of the problem. Do you think that's true?
Look, I mean, I encourage at this point, like, again, I didn't come public until this week, until Christia's letter. But I think that was a clarion call to Liberals to act. And I think that really, if my colleagues, many of whom have come to me and said, oh my God, he needs to go. If they don't say so to him, how is he supposed to know that? If they don't say so, I guess it'll be up to them if they want to go into an election. Right now, we heard from Peter Julian. We heard from Jagmeet Singh. The NDP, wants will vote non-confidence in February or March if Justin has not left. And the people that are the happiest about it would be the Conservatives and the Bloc. They're the ones that are the most upset about what's happening this week. If you listen to Poilievre, if you listen to Blanchette, the one thing that would upset them doing well in the next election is the Liberals making a leadership change. So they are the ones who are the most adamantly against him going. They're the ones that want him to stay, which should make every Liberal in this country give pause, because clearly the people that are running against us want him to stay. Everybody should be thinking about that.
Are you sure that that's the case? I mean, and I put to you what I think has been telegraphed pretty publicly, that the Prime Minister feels actually he is best positioned to be the one who defeats the Conservatives, and more specifically, Pierre Poilievre. I know there are a lot of data points, and believe me, I put them to many members of Cabinet, but that is, I have been told by so many people who have had that conversation with him that is what is conveyed, that he truly believes, particularly in a campaign where he is a proven campaigner, that he will be able to do what he doesn't think other contenders for the leadership will be. Could he be right?
No. I've listened to my constituents. I've traveled across the country in my capacity in Jewish and fair affairs and anti-Semitism. I've listened to Canadians across the country, and many Canadians have tuned him out. Many people who are Liberals tell me every day they want to vote for a Liberal candidate, but they don't want him to be the Prime Minister. And as a result, they're having a tough time voting for the Liberal candidate. And I think, again, you see from the actions of Poilievre, you see from the actions of Blanchette that they want to run against Trudeau. And you understand why. When you look at every data point, every poll, it's not like there are any polls that show the contrary. I think the poll this week that Abacus did was that 19% of Canadians wanted him to stay and 67% wanted him to step down. I mean, this is not a Biden case where Biden's approvals were in the 40s and he was running a couple of points behind Trump. I mean, this is a completely different situation. So anybody who's telling you that somehow the Liberal Party will do better under Justin Trudeau at this point, I don't know what numbers they're looking at. I look at numbers. I haven't seen any numbers that indicate anything even close to that.
Okay, I got to leave it on that note. Mr. Housefather, I appreciate you making the time as always. Thank you.
Thanks, Vassy. Have a good one.